Hello YouTube, it's Miss Flump again, and this time I'm going to speak to you about my hospital and surgical experience over in Brussels. As you all know, on the 23rd of December I was in Belgium ready to have a gastric band fitted, and I had, on the day of my surgery, I had a consultation with the surgeon in his house, and he then drove me to the hospital. Now obviously, because of the incorrect information that I'd been given by the surgeon's English agent, I had to reschedule my flight, speak to my family, book an extra couple of nights in the hotel before I even thought about going to the admissions office. So I had to sit in the waiting room at the main foyer of the hospital for over an hour before I could go ahead through to admissions and sort myself out there. Now obviously, because the surgeon was aware that I hadn't that I had to reschedule my flight, he said, okay, well, we won't take any money off you now, we'll sort that out later on today, so just go and do what you have to do. So after I'd done all of that and spoken to my family and my boyfriend and said, oh, by the way, I'm not going to be home for Christmas, I then went through to admissions. Now when I went through to them, that's where you get your wristband, which sort of then says this person is entitled to have whatever procedure it is that they need doing because they've paid. The woman said, you know, have you got your receipt for payment? I said, no, I've not paid yet. I've just been told to come to the hospital and pay later because I've had other arrangements to make. And she said, okay, fine. She made a few phone calls. We then went up to the department of the hospital that I was going to be staying in, and she went and spoke to the surgeon's manager. The manager came to see me, we went off into a room, I paid. I'd actually had my wristband put on, and then it was just a case of waiting around to be shown into the ward. Now the wards, as you've probably seen from a previous video, they were 3-person wards. I was shown the bathroom, I was shown which sink was mine, I was shown where I could put all of my belongings because we had a wardrobe each. I was shown my bed. I was given a very fetching nightgown and some surgical stockings, or anti-embolism stockings as they're known, to put on. And then I just had to wait until the nurses came through to me, and a few of them introduced themselves to me, and they were absolutely lovely, extremely polite, extremely courteous and caring, and extremely professional. I really couldn't fault the service that I received from the nurses. They came, they did an ECG to check my heart, they did my blood pressure, and they also took quite a bit of, well, they took some blood to do quite a few different tests. They had problems with my right arm because the veins aren't that good, so everything went through my left arm, and they said to me, we might need to make 2 punctures in your arm, but we'll see if everything will go through one. And I mean, I'm not nervous of needles or anything anyhow, but fortunately everything did go through the one where later on my intravenous drips and everything were attached, so that was fine. Another lady that was staying at the hospital happened to be in my ward, which was absolutely brilliant because, you know, we got talking, and I think that sort of helped to make the experience all the more bearable, really, because I was there by myself. So, you know, we got talking and stuff, and she was wheeled down to surgery before I was. I can remember it being 20 to 12 lunchtime when I was finally wheeled from the ward along to the theatre, but I wasn't sent into theatre for about an hour, so I was just sat there kind of just people watching and watching the things happen. In the room where I was waiting, there were a few people in recovery. I saw the occasional nurse walk past, and you know what, I didn't have an ounce of fear whatsoever. I was very much ready for the procedure because it's something that I desperately wanted, and I was completely ready to do this. and just a few minutes before I was actually taken into theatre, a nurse came and pushed me along into a narrower corridor, which led to the theatre, and she made me slide across from my bed to a surgical bed, and by then I was flat on my back and I could only see the ceiling. A few minutes later, I think it was 20 to 1 by this point, because I remember looking at a clock, I got wheeled into theatre. I could hear people talking around me. I couldn't see very much. I didn't get to see any surgical implements or anything like that. So it's good if you're not, if you're a bit frightened of things like that. I mean, I love all that kind of stuff, but I didn't get to see anything. I heard the occasional voice around me, you know, from various different people that obviously worked in the operating theatre, and all there was just sort of like a big massive light above me. That's all I got to see. A few minutes later, a woman sort of looked over me and just said, "You're going to go to sleep now." And I'd heard, because I've never had an operation before in my life, that when you have a general anaesthetic, that you should count to 5 and you'll be out. But I counted and I got up to 9 before I sort of felt myself drift off. And to be honest, the general anaesthetic, it just feels like something warm going into your arm. It's just like a warm feeling of something going into your arm, and then eventually you just drift off. What can I say? Probably less than an hour later, I was woken up by one of the nurses, and I remember having an oxygen mask on my face, and I can remember just my mouth being really, really dry, because obviously I'd not eaten or drunk anything since midnight the night before, so you're looking at sort of 14-15 hours later. And I can just remember not particularly liking the oxygen mask and sort of just moving it slightly away from my mouth so that I could just kind of breathe unaided. And literally for about half a minute to a minute maximum, I had what could only be described as both sharp and dull pain at the same time in kind of like my ribs and my abdomen. It felt as if my ribs were broken, and I can just kind of remember, moaning quite quietly. I was just kind of like, oh, oh. And someone came over to me and said, "We're going to get some pain relief into you," and within 30 seconds I didn't have any pain. I think I just must have just gone back to sleep then, because later on I remember they were like being woken up by the nurse, and she was like, "Okay, you're back in the ward now," and I can just remember being, for the most of the day, asleep, with the exception of occasionally, periodically they would come and they would do my blood pressure and they would check my temperature through my ear. And yeah, it was just blood pressure and my temperature. They were the things that they were checking. They also gave me, there was no fluids for 24 hours after the operation, so they gave me one of those little swab things to clean out my mouth, and oh, I've never been so glad to have something like that on my lips. It was just so, I was so grateful for it. It was so needed. And I slept on and off until about 11 o'clock that evening, when I woke up and started having a bit of a chat with the lady that I'd been speaking to earlier on during the day, who was staying at the hotel. So yeah, I got talking to her. Prior to that, I'd been told by the nurses, don't be brave, don't try and get up and go to the toilet or anything by yourself, ring the bell and ask for help. And I rang the bell about midnight and sort of said, "Oh, hello, is it possible for someone to help me to go to the toilet?" And good enough, they walked me to the toilet. And actually the lady from the hotel that was staying in the bed next to me, she actually said, "Gosh, you did not stride off there to the loo." So I was obviously quite